Hello, my loves. My name is Chioma. Welcome back to my channel. Today, I want to talk about bringing dependent family members on your student visa into Australia. Yes. I have had different versions of this question come through. Some people have leaned more towards the immigration side of things, like what to consider in terms of meeting immigration requirements when you think about bringing in your dependent family members into Australia. But some others, and I think the majority of the questions have been along the practical aspect of things. Okay, so people have asked me, how did you manage being on a student visa, juggling a full-time study load, as well as looking after family, looking after young children, and also work? How did you manage all of that? Hey, my dear people, I'm just going to give you a very short answer here. It was not easy. It is not easy at all. But I am quite happy at the fact that people are actually asking this question, because it's one of those things that you really need to carefully plan around. It's not one of those things you just leave to chance. It's not one of those things that you want to just wing it. Oh, no, let me come in first and then we will manage when we come in. You will find out that management, okay, is more like sufferment. I know there's no word like that, but that is the Niger in me speaking, okay? I am going to talk about the immigration related requirements. I'm not going to dwell so much on that because, guys, I feel like I have so many videos now that I have made regarding some of these conditions I am going to mention. So I would encourage you to go back, search my channel, watch those videos. I'm going to leave some links in the description as well, okay? This video is going to focus mostly on the practical side of things, but it's good that I touch a little bit on the immigration requirements as well, and then just get them out of the way so that we can get down to the main business, okay? So the two things that are immigration related would be proof of funds and the GTE requirements. So yes, even if you're not coming in together as a family unit, you want the rest of your family to join you later, you still need to meet the GTE requirement, which means you would have to write another GTE statement for your family, okay? So your GTE statement in relation to bringing in family members, especially if you've got school-aged dependent children, okay? In addition to all the other conditions you need to meet, I want to mention this one. If you've got school-aged dependent children, make sure that you have evidence of school enrollments for your kids. Generally speaking, if we're talking about schooling here in Australia for school-aged children, it is not free. That's the general statement around whether your kids can study for free. But there are exemptions that apply. So that's why I would encourage you to go watch that video. If you're studying towards a research-based postgraduate qualification, which might be a master's by research or a doctoral degree in certain states and territories, okay, not in all states, but in certain states, then your kids might be exempt from paying school fees in a public school. And in Western Australia, which is where Perth is located, if you're studying towards a master's degree, it doesn't matter this time whether it's a master's by coursework or master's by research, your school-aged dependent children would be eligible to study for free, okay, in a public school. So please watch that video and then, do your own research. I would leave a lot of links in the description. Now, let's talk about proof of funds. Proof of funds for families starts at 72,592 Australian dollars. I don't want that amount to freak you out, because something else I have realized that people do not understand is that amount actually includes your school fees, okay? You, the primary student visa holder who is coming in to study. It includes the first 12 months of your tuition fees. So if you minus that amount from the 72,592, the balance on that amount will also include living expenses for yourself and your dependent ones for the first 12 months of your stay, and also includes your travel costs, so your flight tickets and all of that. For a detailed breakdown of everything that has gone into working out that estimate, I'm going to leave a link in the description. So please follow that link to the official immigration website that gives you a detailed breakdown of every item that goes into that amount. All right, so now that we have all that fun immigration stuff out of the way, not fun actually, let's get into the meat of the business of today, right? So, this is where some of you who have had practical questions around how did we manage, how did we juggle all of that, this is where I get to address some of your concerns. Listen carefully. The first thing I am going to say here, if you are a two-parent family, make arrangements for both parents to be in Australia together, especially if kids are involved. Unfortunately, I know of people who the primary applicant got their visa and then the non-traveling parents was okay for the studying parent to go with the kids. I have seen the struggle. There is nothing fun about that struggle. For some of us who were here together with our spouses, we found it challenging. Say nothing of people who traveled without their spouse or without their partner, but they came in with their kids. Another thing I'm going to mention here is that even if you've got family or you've got friends here in Australia, please let that not be something you base your plans on. Except if that plan or that intention has been properly discussed and agreed. Even then, I would say be careful, okay? Be careful, still make your own plans. I have seen people who are like, oh, my brother lives in the same town or my sister lives in the same city. And then you come in here and you find out that brother does not even have time for themselves. Say nothing of having time for you and your issues, okay? If you're a two-parent family, make arrangements for both of you to be together and support the family because it is difficult. Another thing I'm going to mention along the same lines is if you're coming in to study a course that has the placement requirements, for instance, social work or nursing, you should also make plans ahead of time. Your placement will come down the track. It's not going to be in your first semester or first trimester of study. But please don't wait until that time before you start making plans. This is actually something that I wish I had more insight around and I had planned towards, okay? So as soon as you come in, you start working, start saving up money for childcare, start saving up money for any other care arrangement that you think would make your life easier when you start placement. Because for social work placements, for instance, they are full-time. You're working Monday to Friday full-time, unpaid. Emphasis on no payments, okay? So which means that you're not going to be earning as much as before, but on top of that, because it's a full-time job, you probably will not have as much time for your family. So start saving towards any care arrangements you need for your kids when you start your placement. In our case, I was doing my placements during the week and then working on the weekends. Think about it. That is 7 whole days in a week of not having time to spend with my family, no quality time with my family. And it wasn't just me, it was my husband as well. We were probably only seeing our children early in the morning when we woke up and got them ready to ship off to another care arrangement we had made, or in the night after we all came back, and we only came back just to eat, sleep, and rinse and repeat the following day. That was all we were doing. So let's move on to the next one. And the next one is kind of tied to what I have already mentioned regarding coming in together as a family. What are the pros and cons of coming in together versus leaving the kids and maybe the non-traveling parents back in Nigeria or back in your home country? In Nigeria, for instance, we have a very different kind of community when it comes to raising kids. Family members are easily accessible, okay? Even if they don't live with you, chances are they are popping in and out of your house all the time. So at any given time, there's a cousin, there's an auntie, there's a sister, there's a brother that is available to help you look after your kids or help you to manage your life back in Nigeria. Some people even have domestic help, okay? All of that is going to be absent when you arrive in Australia. It will be you and you alone doing everything, employing the services of a nanny, of a cleaner here. You're going to be paying by the hour, my darling, okay? We're talking about from $25 an hour all the way to maybe even $35 an hour. Can you afford it? If you're cashed up, by all means, go for it, okay? You might think it's going to be an easy adjustment. I am here to tell you that it is not an easy adjustment. So think very carefully about the needs of your family and whether it is better for the rest of your family to join you after you're done with your course and you're on a more stable visa that allows you to work full-time and you have more regular hours. It doesn't even have to be a permanent residency visa. Maybe just the postgraduate visa you can get after you're done with your studies. I know for some people this might not be feasible, like I said, but what I am just trying to do is to give you pointers, things to think about. If you haven't thought about these things, start thinking about them today. So this leads me to the next point, which is child care cost, child-related expenses. Yeah, the cost of daycare, the cost of preschool, the cost of family daycare, before and after school care. If your children are below the age of school, you might want to consider putting them in daycare. By the way, if that is a consideration for you, one thing I would advise you is that as soon as your student visa is confirmed, like as soon as you're granted that student visa, even before you leave Nigeria, put your kids on a wait list to a daycare, because the wait list here can be very long. At this point, I think it's important to also direct you to another video I made. This is what the video looks like regarding cost of living here in Sydney. For the points that I am making, I think that video has invaluable information. Okay, so go and watch that video. It would give you an idea, especially if you're coming into Sydney, it will give you an idea what the cost of living is and what you should plan around. Now, when we're talking about daycare costs can go anywhere from $120 up to $170 per child per day. Okay, so if you have 2 children, 3 children, do the calculation yourself. So if you have school age dependent children, there might be a little window of flexibility there, in the sense that you can actually schedule work when your kids are in school. You might also have classes when your kids are in school. So if your kids are in school, it may also be the case that you need to think about before and after school care. So if you've got really early morning shifts and you're not going to be there to take your kids to school, or at the time that your kids are dismissing from school every day, you need to be at work and it's going to be tricky to arrange school pickups and care arrangements, then there is something called before and after school care. Before and after school care can range anywhere from $18 all the way to maybe $35 per day. It is also possible that you're able to arrange with your spouse to avoid all of these costs entirely. So maybe at the time that your kids require care, one parent is going to be available to look after them while the other parent is working or attending classes, and vice versa. So there's a lot of tag teaming going on. For us, it was a combination of all these things. There were times when the both of us were just not available to look after the kids. Okay, husband had classes, I also had classes to attend, and classes are compulsory. As an international student, you know that, don't you? So in those cases, we had to think about casual care. So now I have given you something to think about. Have you subscribed yet? Would you consider subscribing if this video has made any sense so far? Okay, please subscribe because it helps this channel grow. It encourages me as well. Click on subscribe, turn on the notifications if you do not want to miss anything that I post on here. But at the same time, guys, give me a thumbs up. Give this video a thumbs up. All right, so this next one I am going to talk about is something that is super important. Let's talk about rent, community, and some other stuff. So there's a few things that I have brought together under this particular point. Think about where you actually want to settle in the state that you're coming into. So I want you to think about the rent. I've already spoken about cost of living. Please go and see that video. Very important. So think about rent. But beyond that, think about the suburb you want to settle in. There are things to consider when it comes to the suburb as well. Different suburbs have a different vibe and a different feel to it. So you need to think about what is important to you and what is important for your family. So for instance, do you want to be in a residential area where things are quieter and there's lots of families around? Or are you happy to be in a hip, vibrant, young, mobile area? Are you someone who is quite keen on cafe culture? You want to be in a place that has lots of shops? Or are you someone who just wants to be in a quiet place? Okay. Now, I know in the time that you're just coming in or thinking about coming in, some of these things might not even appear to be important to you. You just want to come in and maybe your priority is just to get a cheap place to stay. That is fine. But why I am saying this is because the place you live in will actually determine a lot of things in your life that may not be readily obvious. For instance, school enrollments here are catchment based, which means that schools will give priority to people who live within the catchment area when it comes to enrollment. It is only where they are unable to fill up their spaces within area enrollments that they would look at enrollments from out of catchment. Okay? So what it means is that you put your child in a school, you might find that you would become obligated to remain in the same area, even if you eventually end up not liking this area. Because if you think about the stress of re-enrolling them in another school, changing your address, the move itself is stressful and expensive. Finding a house to stay in the first place is an issue. The rental process is so, what's the word I'm looking for right now? It's not only time consuming, it can be frustrating. So it's not something that you settle in a house, 2 weeks later you're like, oh, I don't like this area, I want to move again. A lot of people tend to settle in an area and remain in that area. Not because they don't see other areas that they would like to move to, but because there's all these other constraints. There's the constraints of re-enrolling your child in another school. There's the constraints of actually inspecting, applying for houses and getting rejected so many times before you find a house. It is not easy. And that is why you need to be careful from the beginning. From the get-go, you want to think about what is important to you in terms of the profile of the suburb you want to live in. Before we came to Australia, while we were still in Nigeria, I was looking at immigration-related stuff, but I was also very keen on knowing what life was like here, where we might eventually settle and things like that. So I found that Parramatta is a city in Sydney, right? Parramatta happened to be smack in the middle of the greater Sydney area. And it seemed like from all of my research, I could see that Parramatta was well connected to other parts of Sydney. The rents were affordable, and it just kind of ticked a lot of the boxes around what our needs would be when we were newly arrived in the country. So we decided to settle in Parramatta. We made this decision even before we left Nigeria. We remained in Parramatta for 3 whole years. It was a well-connected place, and also being in a place that is accessible to public transport, accessible to amenities, accessible to good schools, will also help to ease some of that pressure, for instance, of thinking that you have to get a car as soon as you arrive, because having a car is necessary as a family, but it is not something you should be thinking about to do the first 2 days after you arrive. If you live in an area where things are close to you, just get yourself a pram if you have young children to move around easily. But if you live in a place where the shops are close to you, transport is close to you, it will help you to at least get settled, look at your pockets, and then decide what your next steps would be and what your priorities are and what you want to spend money on. Because when you first come in, you're going to be relying heavily on your savings. You would not have found a job yet. I hope this video is hitting the right spot. So I just want to wrap this up by giving you some general tips. Some general tips on how to make your journey or your experience easier and a bit more fun, okay? I know when you first come in, it's a new country, it's a new environment, you have no family, you have no friends. And the tendency would be to keep to yourself, to go out and engage with your community. There are lots of free activities you can join as a parent. There are play groups. Most suburbs would have like a neighborhood center or even the local library, and they would have programs for kids who are not yet of school age, play groups, mommy groups and all of that. So if you can find this around your area, please join these groups, because it's another way to find solutions and answers to other questions you may have that nobody is able to answer for you. Let me tell you, there was a church I attended soon after we arrived. A few women came together and they would rotate childcare amongst themselves. And that way it freed up time for some of them to work, some of them to go to classes, some of them, to engage in other commitments they have, but have someone that they trusted looking after their kids. They would rotate childcare amongst themselves. That was in a church. That kind of information will not come to you when you're sitting in your house. It's only when you go out and engage in the community that you will find these sorts of things. So my darlings, before I go, let's sweeten things up a little. Let me leave you with something sweet, okay? So that it's not like we've spent all this time just talking about negative stuff, okay? Challenge, difficulties, struggles. That's not all it's about. Life is not that serious. And that is why I want to say to you, please make time. I want you to be intentional about this. Make time to relax with your family. Make time to look after yourself. There will be lots of bills to pay, yes. There will be lots of things to juggle, that is true. But at the same time, that extra shift that you forgo just so that you can have some time to relax might actually be the thing that keeps you from ending up in hospital. I am saying this from experience. I wish I took my own advice. In those first few years, we had our heads down, grinding every single day because, like I said, the pressure to pay bills, the pressure for this, the pressure for that. But now looking back, in hindsight, I know that if I had scheduled breaks in between, like if I had scheduled days where I didn't work at all and I was not driven by, oh, the lost wages, if I don't work today, this is how much I am losing. And if I lose this money, oh, we will not be able to pay this or pay that. It's a big lie. We would still have been able to manage, okay? But you know how it is. When we are deep in some of these pressures, we just feel like we can't come up for air. Please take time to enjoy yourself as well. At the end of the day, this video is to encourage you to make better plans. It is not to discourage you. It is not for you to start thinking, oh my goodness, this is hard. You sure say we no go abandon this our jackpot plans. I'm just joking here, okay? That is not the intention of this video, because I know sometimes when I have made these sorts of videos where I have been open and forthcoming about my experiences, I have had comments from people who have expressed their concerns like, oh my goodness, this looks very difficult, it sounds very difficult, and now I am questioning my plans. That is not what this video is intended for. At least now you have the information. What are you going to do with it? So guys, I'll leave you here. I'll see you again in my next video. Bye-bye.